When Travis finally arrived at the hospital 3 weeks after my accident, his first words were, "You're useless. You can't even handle simple chores, let alone manage a family. Why did I even marry you?" His scathing remarks were more painful than the injuries I had suffered for years, but this time his total lack of empathy was the tipping point. However, what he did next left me frozen, unable to understand the depth of his cruelty, and no, it wasn't just words this time. "Hi there, I'm Olivia, a 43-year-old housewife, and I live with my husband, Travis, and our daughter, Sophia, who is 7 years old." When we first met, Travis was all I could have ever imagined. He was charming, confident, and attentive. He won me over, and we were married a year after we first met. For a while, life seemed like a dream, with Travis surprising me with romantic dinners, bringing me flowers, and promising me a future full with joy and love. After we got married, Travis changed from loving me to treating me like a servant and expecting the house to be immaculate. I regret leaving my secure profession to fulfill his dreams for a traditional family life. Meals when I tried to voice my frustrations, he would dismiss them, saying, "You're a housewife. It's not like you're doing real work." Over time, I stopped fighting and concentrated on raising Sophia, trying to protect her from Travis's lack of interest, but the tension was evident. Travis blamed everyone else for his instability by changing jobs constantly. I managed to put up with his antics for years, but I was getting impatient. Then came the accident, a moment that would alter everything. I frequently felt like I was raising two kids, Sophia and him, 3 weeks prior to my mishap. My father said in a steady but serious tone, "Your mother and I have decided to transfer a portion of our assets to you. It's time you had financial independence." I had been avoiding my parents for months because I was ashamed of how my life had turned out, but they insisted that I have an important conversation with them. My father said, "Matter of fact, we're keeping $4 million for ourselves, and the rest is for you and Sophia's future $14 million. I was shocked to learn that my parents, who had built up a substantial fortune over the years from their successful import-export business, had decided to transfer $14 million to your account. I had always known they intended to leave their legacy to me, but I hadn't anticipated it happening so quickly or to such a degree. As we become older, my mother added, "We're worried about you because we've seen how Travis treats you." I gasped, scarcely able to fathom the quantity, but why? Their words made me cry because I had spent years keeping the truth about my marriage from them. But they had seen that I had promised myself that this money would be my lifeline and a means of securing a better future for Sophia and myself. "We want to make sure you and Sophia are taken care of no matter what." I chose to protect myself by not telling Travis about the inheritance, since I knew precisely how he would react and demand control of the money, claiming it as his right as my husband. As the days went on, I saw Travis becoming more. He was suspicious and curious, and he had begun to ask pointed questions about my parents' financial situation, giving me clues about the future of our family. It was only a matter of time until he confronted me, and then there was the accident, a terrible turn of events that left me defenseless and confined to the hospital, providing Travis with the ideal opportunity to attack. It happened on a calm Tuesday. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed with my legs in heavy casts. The pain was excruciating, but the news was worse. Both of my legs were broken, and I would need months to recover. I felt helpless knowing that I would be confined to this bed for weeks, dependent on others for everything. During those early days, my parents and Sophia were my saving grace. They visited me every day, brought me meals, and took care of Sophia while I was incapacitated. But Travis never showed up. He claimed to be too busy with work, but I knew better, so when he didn't show up until the 3rd week of my hospitalization, I expected worry, if not guilt. Instead, he gave me a frown and said, "You've really messed things up this time." He was standing at the foot of my bed, his arms crossed, and I glanced at him in shock. Do you have any idea how much of a burden you've become? Travis, a car struck me. Is it my fault that I can't walk? Don't start making excuses. He yelled, the least you could do is make this easier for me. I've been running around like a crazy person because of you. I tightened my hands in an attempt to remain composed. How can I specifically make this easier? Travis, I have 2 broken legs and am lying here. When he ignored my question and pulled a chair up to the bed, he said, don't act surprised. I've known for weeks. My heart pounded and he said, how do you know that that doesn't matter? I knew where this was going, knowing that your parents were giving you $14 million. My stomach dropped. Give me the money. You're lying here for no reason at all. Since I am the one responsible for this family, I deserve all of that money. What will you do with it? Anger building in my breast, I shook my head. No, Travis, his face is twisted with anger. You dare refuse me that money, which belongs to me and is for Sophia's and my future, not yours. After everything I've done for you, this is how you pay me back. Without me, you wouldn't exist. He got up suddenly and started to pace the room. Olivia is useless. His rage boiled over in his eyes as he walked to the bedside table with the blood pressure meter, and I could feel the tension in the room growing. When he snatched it, my heart fell. Fury makes his knuckles white. Travis turned to face me. You think you can deny me? You think you have the right to retain that money from me? You're a worthless woman, he said, his voice rising as he leaned over the bed. The blood pressure monitor clutched hard in his fists, his face contorted with anger. Olivia, this is your way of paying me back for carrying this family on my back. My legs were broken, and I was stuck, absolutely defenseless, and my heart was racing. Travis, please stop. I tried to sound cool as I continued. This isn't about you. The money is for Sophia's security and future. Before I could utter another word, he held the blood pressure monitor above his head and said, don't lecture me. You wouldn't even have a future without me, and now you're attempting to take what's mine. You don't get to say no to me. He yelled at Olivia, bringing it down with a startling amount of force. When I turned my head at the last second, the monitor struck my shoulder, grazed my head, and then crashed onto the metal bed frame. I cried out as the impact reverberated throughout the room, alerting the nurses, because a nurse and a security guard hurried in as soon as the door burst open. As they absorbed the image, their eyes widened. Travis was still holding onto the now damaged monitor when he turned to face them, looking pale. What's happening? The nurse insisted on putting herself between Travis and me after provoking me. She's trying to ruin my life, Travis yelled defensively, tossing the monitor to the floor with a clatter. The security guard didn't hesitate, sir. He then gave the order to grab Travis by the arm and tell him to leave. Travis initially resisted, his eyes darting back to me. You'll regret this, Olivia, he hissed as the guard started to escort him out. This isn't over, he said when the nurse leaned over me to check my injuries. Are you okay, ma'am? She asked gently. I nodded weakly, but my body ached, and my heart felt like it had been broken into a million pieces. Please just keep him away from me. As Travis was dragged out of the room, I experienced a mixture of relief and fear. The next few weeks were some of the hardest of my life, but I was relieved that I had finally seen him for who he really was, a man who would do anything to control me. I stayed in the hospital recovering from my injuries, which included both the accident-related ones and the bruises from Travis's attack. My parents and Sophia visited me every day, and their support gave me the strength to endure the pain, but the emotional scars were more difficult to heal. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Travis standing over me, his face twisted with rage, the blood pressure monitor in his hands. The thought of him trying to take control again filled me with dread, and I knew I couldn't allow that to happen one morning as I was going through my phone. Softly, Olivia whispered, "You don't have to go back to him." "I know, Mom, but not after what he did." I responded to my voice steady, "But I have to be smart about this. I have to make sure Sophia and I are secure and that Travis is held accountable for his actions. Over the course of the following few days, I started to put my plan together. My parents assisted me in gathering financial records and other documentation that demonstrated Travis's negligence and abusive behavior, and I filed a police report against him for assault with the hospital's nurse and security guard as witnesses. I then contacted a lawyer, a shrewd and driven woman named CLA, who assured me that she would not only help me get a divorce, but also hold Travis accountable for his crimes. You have a strong case. As the legal process got underway, I concentrated on getting better after CLA promised me during one of our meetings with the witnesses and the hospital documents that he wouldn't abandon this. Physical therapy was exhausting, but I made progress at every turn. Literally and figuratively felt like a victory. My parents' unwavering support and Sophia's bright smiles reminded me of what I was fighting for. One day, as I watched Sophia play with her grandparents in the hospital courtyard, I realized that I wasn't just fighting for justice. I was fighting to reclaim my life to show Sophia that no one has the right to take away our safety and dignity. Meanwhile, Travis's life was falling apart. He couldn't approach me or Sophia because of the assault charges, and the inheritance money remained firmly out of his grasp. He called me multiple times, alternating between apologies and threats, but I ignored him each time I heard his voicemail. I felt a mixture of satisfaction and rage every time I heard his voicemail. He was losing, and he knew it, but I wasn't done yet. I wanted justice. On the day of the court hearing, I experienced a mixture of anxiety and resolve. Sophia, who was too little to comprehend the specifics, stayed at home with a reliable babysitter while Claire walked beside me as we entered the courtroom, her confidence telling me that I wasn't alone in my battle. My parents were seated in the audience, their presence a continual source of support. Travis was sitting on the opposite side of the courtroom, looking haggard and worn out. His lawyer was whispering quickly in his ear, but this time he wasn't in control, and his smug attitude from our previous interactions was gone. In her opening statement, Claire described the hospital assault in great detail. The nurse and the security guard both testified about the violent incident, and hospital records were presented as proof of the injuries and bruises I had sustained during Travis's attack. As the testimony went on, Claire turned her attention to the larger pattern of abuse I had experienced over the years. Presented financial records, emails, and text messages that clearly demonstrated Travis's manipulation and neglect. Finally, CLA addressed the inheritance, saying that this man's greed was unbridled and that he tried to force my client to give him her rightful inheritance of $4 million. When she refused, he turned to violence. This was not a singular incident, but rather the result of years of financial and emotional abuse. Travis's attorney attempted to minimize the assault's seriousness by saying that it was an outburst of rage and that Travis had expressed regret, but the evidence was too strong. As the prosecution gave the facts, Travis felt the judge's critical stare. Travis tried to place the blame on me when he took the stand. He continued, his voice faltering, "I've done everything for this family, and she's the one who refused to support me." She's exaggerating. CLA declined to release him from the situation. After days of testimony and deliberation, the judge handed down the verdict, finding Travis guilty of assault and coercion. He was also sentenced to 18 months in prison and ordered to pay a hefty fine, a portion of which would go toward my recovery costs. Hook's cross-examination was brutal, forcing him to acknowledge his repeated failures as a husband and father. The court also handed me complete custody of Sophia, preventing Travis from getting in touch with us without permission. The divorce was finalized, and the inheritance remained in my name alone. As the gavel fell, I felt as though a burden had been lifted. I felt liberated for the first time in years as I walked out of a courthouse after justice had been delivered. My parents gave me a tight hug, their pleasure showing in their grins. When I returned home, Sophia raced to me, and her laughing served as a reminder of why I had fought so hard in the months that followed. I rebuilt my life, moved into a new, loving, and warm home, and used my inheritance to give Sophia a bright future while also pursuing long-neglected passions. I began volunteering at a women's shelter, using my experience to help others leave toxic relationships. As Sophia grew, I realized that I had made the right decision for both her and myself. The past had left its wounds, but it also taught me to appreciate my strength. Sophia flourished in the calm setting, and her laughter filled the house every day. Travis was the end of a chapter in my life. My story was not about the suffering he caused, but rather about the fortitude I found and the life I created in spite of it.